I always thought the moment I confessed my love to her was sacred, etched in some golden corner of time, immune to rot. But the past is never what you remember. It's what you want to believe. The rain fell like it did back then, soft, almost apologetic. I stood outside the university library, clutching the same blue envelope in my hand, identical to the one I gave her 10 years ago. Only this time, I already knew what was inside. And what wasn't. Time travel wasn't supposed to be real. Not in the science fiction way. Not for people like me, mid-30s, married, worn down by routine and silence. But something cracked in me the night I found her journal. The one she thought I'd never read. The one where she called me convenient. A safety net. A placeholder until she was ready to chase the man she actually loved. Her words gutted me. So when the old man at the train station asked if I wanted to revisit a single moment in my past, just to see, not to change, he said, I didn't laugh. I just said, take me to the day I confessed to her. Now here I was, again. 24. Shaky hands. Beating heart. A foolish kind of hope burning in my chest. But something was different this time. I could hear her thoughts. She smiled as she approached me under that awning, brushing rain off her sleeves, cheeks flushed with fake surprise. But her mind whispered. God, not him again. Please don't let this be a proposal. Why do nice guys always ruin everything? My heart shattered before I even opened my mouth. And when I did, I barely recognized my voice. This is for you, I said, holding out the letter like a child offering a broken toy. She took it, still smiling, and her thoughts stabbed deeper. I'll keep it, in case I ever need someone to fall back on. I stepped back, trembling. My past self, somewhere in this broken loop, was still in love with her. Still dreaming. But I wasn't. Not anymore. Without another word, I took the letter back, tore it in half, and let the wind and rain carry the pieces away. Her eyes widened in confusion, but I didn't stay to explain. Because for the first time, I wasn't the fool in love. I was the man waking up. And I had questions, dangerous ones. Like, if she never loved me, why did she marry me? And more importantly, who did she think she was fooling? People talk about love like it's a flame, something that burns, ignites, consumes. But in my case, love was a mirror. And the worst part? It reflected everything I refused to see. I was never the kind of man women lined up for. Too average. Too patient. Too loyal in a world that values conquest over consistency. But when I met her, Lena, none of that seemed to matter. She looked at me like I mattered, like my quiet way of loving someone was a strength, not a flaw. I was a university teaching assistant back then, 26, emotionally reclusive, but intellectually obsessive. I had grown up middle class, the son of a bookkeeper and a janitor, with ambition instilled in my bones and humility stitched into my skin. Lena, though. She was all silk and sharp, like a blade wrapped in lace. Her father was on the university board. Her mother hosted charity galas in heels that cost more than my rent. We met in the philosophy library, fitting, really. I was shelving books she never intended to read. She asked for directions to Nietzsche and ended up asking about my favorite quote. I told her, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. She smiled like she already knew she was the illusion I'd willingly fall for. Lena was magnetic in a way that made logic crumble. Her laughter made you forget she'd just insulted you. She said my honesty was refreshing, but I'd later realize she meant naive. She called me her grounding wire, but I think I was just the quiet place she could land between storms. We dated for 2 years before I proposed with a second-hand ring and a handwritten letter folded inside a hollowed-out book. She cried when she read it. Or pretended to. At the time, I couldn't tell the difference. Now, I replay the tears in my head and wonder if she was mourning the illusion of loving me, or the inconvenience of saying yes. Then there was Caleb, her best friend since high school, or so she claimed. A real estate agent with veneers for a smile and charm as calculated as a sales pitch. He was everything I wasn't, bold, ambitious in a performative way, and always dressed like he was headed to a magazine shoot instead of an open house. He would lean in too close when talking to her, say things that tiptoed over the line of appropriate, and laugh at jokes I hadn't heard. At first, I thought I was being insecure. Lena assured me they were just friends. She'd roll her eyes whenever I brought him up. "Don't be jealous," she'd say. "You know you're the one I chose." But the truth is, she never chose me. She settled, and even then, probably not for long. There was a time I asked Caleb directly if anything had ever happened between them. We were at Lena's birthday dinner, she was in the restroom, and it was just the two of us by the bar. He sipped his drink, smiled over the rim, and said, "She loves you in her own way." Then he added, almost too quietly, whatever that means. It was the first crack in the mirror. Looking back, there were signs, small, easily dismissed at the time. The way her phone always flipped screen down when I walked in. The late-night calls she'd take in the hallway. The polite but distant way she responded to affection when we were around others. But when you love someone, you become fluent in self-deception. You build a narrative around their inconsistencies and call it understanding. And then there was Erin, my colleague in the English department. She was the only one who ever really saw me unravel, thread by emotional thread. We started off sharing notes, then coffee, then unspoken truths. She never judged Lena, but she didn't pretend Lena was perfect either. Erin was kind, curious, and painfully observant. She'd glance at me like she knew what I hadn't admitted to myself yet: I was already losing Lena, and maybe I never truly had her. Erin would play a much bigger role later, though I couldn't see it yet. For now, she was a quiet presence in my chaos, one that didn't demand anything, only offered something I hadn't known I needed: clarity. And me? I was the fool with a love letter clutched like a trophy, blind to the fact that the woman I adored was rehearsing a different script entirely. I thought I'd won her heart, but it turns out, I was just a character in a love story she never planned to finish. They say love makes fools of us all, but I never thought I'd be the kind who begged for scraps of affection like a starving man. I met Alina on a rainy afternoon at the university library. She wasn't even supposed to be there, she hated the quiet, she told me later, calling it pretentious silence. But that day, she ducked in to escape a sudden downpour, soaked in her cream sweater and denim skirt, her laughter echoing against the marble floor as she slipped on the wet tiles. I offered her my umbrella, even though I had no idea who she was. That was the beginning. Alina was the kind of woman who made the air feel heavier. Everyone wanted her attention, but she rarely gave it. When she did, it felt like sunlight cutting through clouds, unexpected, dazzling, momentary. So when she chose me, I wore her love like armor. I felt chosen, exceptional, special. And maybe that was my first mistake. At the time, I was just a teaching assistant in the philosophy department, barely scraping by, tutoring on the side to afford rent and food. She, on the other hand, came from old money and even older influence. Her father was a retired diplomat. Her mother sat on the board of 3 art institutions. She lived in a heritage home with stained glass windows and a butler who answered the door in polished shoes. I, meanwhile, lived in a creaky studio apartment above a tailor shop that smelled like mothballs and incense. But she never made me feel small, at least not in the beginning. She liked how serious I was. She said it made her feel grounded, real. I liked how reckless she was. She could talk a museum curator into letting her touch the marble sculptures. She once kissed me in the middle of an academic conference while I was giving a presentation. That's how we worked. She ignited, I steadied. I wrote her letters. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. On napkins, Old lecture notes, even the backs of receipts. I told her about my mother's favorite lullaby, my fear of becoming irrelevant, my dream of writing a book on moral paradoxes. She called them little soul post-its. Said she kept them all. I never thought to ask if that was true. She never wrote back, not once, but she always smiled when I handed her another. "You're the only man who writes love letters in an age of DMs," she once said, placing one in her designer handbag without even reading it. I laughed at the time. Now it feels like an omen I ignored. Alina had a friend, Michael. Childhood friend, she said. He was everything I wasn't, confident, polished, wealthy, connected. The kind of man who walked into a room and made it his stage. I hated how he looked at her like she was already his, and I hated more how she let him. But every time I voiced my unease, she'd laugh and call me territorial. "Don't be provincial, darling," she'd purr. "Jealousy is for amateurs." I told myself I was being insecure. I had no right to be suspicious. She chose me, didn't she? Despite the class gap, despite the fact I couldn't even take her out to the places she liked because I couldn't afford the wine menu, she still came to my apartment and curled up on my old couch with a bag of chips and her bare feet in my lap. That had to mean something. Didn't it? We talked about marriage once. She brushed it off with a joke, "You'd make a good husband, loyal like a Labrador." I didn't laugh. Neither did she, really. In hindsight, that conversation was a turning point. I realized I wanted a forever she never promised. She wanted fireworks, I wanted a fireplace. And yet I kept feeding the flame, hoping the warmth would be enough for both of us. Still, she let me believe. That was her cruelest kindness. She let me write those letters. Let me plan a proposal I never got to give. Let me fall, hard, honestly, blindly, until the ground disappeared beneath me. I loved her completely. And I thought that was enough. But love, real love, shouldn't feel like something you have to earn every day just to be allowed to keep. And even before I knew the truth, I had started to feel it. I always thought betrayal would feel like a slap. Quick. Hot. Violent. But no, it was slow. Like sinking in lukewarm water, watching the room blur as air thins around you. It started innocently. At least, that's what I told myself to avoid breaking. My wife, Hannah, was humming in the kitchen, barefoot in a navy silk robe I bought her last anniversary. Her hair was twisted up carelessly, and her voice floated in fragments over the sound of boiling water. She looked happy. Effortlessly so. And I realized something terrifying, I hadn't seen her happy in weeks. Not like this. Not with me. And I wasn't the reason for that smile. I already suspected something was wrong. The late meetings. The phone she always took with her to the bathroom. The way she started calling me babe again, performative, like muscle memory she wanted to preserve. But what unraveled everything, what cracked the illusion open like a rotting fruit, was the day I opened the drawer in her study looking for a pen, and found the old love letter I had written her on the night I confessed my feelings. It wasn't folded neatly like I'd imagined she'd kept it. It was crumpled, spine-creased, the ink smudged where her fingers had once pressed too hard. I held it like an artifact, trembling with the echo of my old self. I had poured everything into that letter, my fear, my hope, my awe of her. It was the most honest thing I had ever written. It felt holy. But there was something else beneath it. A second envelope. Handwritten. Masculine. I don't remember walking to the couch, or sitting down. Just the way my stomach turned as I read the words meant for my wife, written in a voice I knew too well. Ethan. My best man. My oldest friend. The guy who once swore he'd take a bullet for me. The letter was blunt. Not poetic like mine. He didn't need to be. Last night. I can't stop thinking about it. Your skin. Your breath. The way you whispered my name like it meant more than his ever did. I dropped it like it burned me. I think a part of me hoped it was old. From before we married. From some fleeting mistake she'd buried. But no. The date in the corner. 3 weeks ago. I sat there for hours, unable to move. My heart wasn't just broken, it was confused. How do you grieve something that still breathes beside you? That still smiles across the dinner table, still kisses your cheek like nothing's changed. When she came home, I didn't confront her. I watched. Studying her like an actress I couldn't quite cast. Her movements were too fluid. Too perfect. As if she was trying not to crack the porcelain of her mask. The next few days, I retraced everything, texts, calls, even GPS logs. She'd been meeting him at the wine bar we used to frequent. My name was still in their reservation file. But it wasn't just about sex. That would have been cleaner. She laughed with him. She shared ideas with him. She planned with him. I remember sitting in the shower, water running cold, whispering, "Why him?" over and over until it sounded like static. And then came the real wound. I remembered the wish I'd made on the night I confessed to her. We were under a street lamp. I was shaking, letter in hand, a bouquet pressed between my arms. I had prayed, actually prayed, that if this wasn't real, I'd rather know then. That I'd rather suffer that moment than live a lie. And maybe someone heard me. Because 2 nights later, I had a dream. A vivid one. I was back there again. The street lamp. My younger self in front of her. Same trembling hand. Same letter. Same air full of nervous hope. Only this time, I could hear her thoughts. He's sweet. God, he's so intense. But Ethan makes me laugh. Makes me feel light. This feels like an obligation. I woke up gasping. And it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a memory. A buried truth that had finally clawed its way to the surface. The next morning, I found the letter again, the real one. The one I had written that night. I stared at it for a long time. My penmanship. My sincerity. And then I tore it in half. No, not in half, I shredded it. Slowly. Like peeling skin off a lie. I walked to the fire pit in our backyard. The same one where we once toasted marshmallows, giggling like college kids. And I burned every piece of it. As the paper curled into black ash, I realized something cruel and freeing. She never loved me the way I loved her. Not then. Not now. What she loved was the idea of being loved deeply. What Ethan gave her was excitement, chaos. What I gave her was sacrifice. And sacrifice, I learned, is invisible to those who don't need it. I didn't cry that night. I planned. I decided to keep playing the fool, for now. To hold my pain like a weapon hidden behind my smile. I knew something she didn't. When someone builds their love on lies, the truth doesn't just hurt. It unravels. And I was going to watch her unravel, thread by thread. I sat on the park bench where I had once waited nervously, clutching the love letter I'd written like it was a shield, a lifeline, a truth. The ink had barely dried when I first handed it to her all those years ago. Back then, her smile lit up something in me I didn't even know could feel warm. That day, I thought I'd found home in a person. But now, after hearing what was in her heart, what she never dared say out loud, I couldn't unhear it. He's sweet. But that's all. He'll never be enough. She'd smiled at me that day. Smiled. Took the letter. Said she was touched. Hugged me like she meant it. And the whole time she was already thinking about someone else. Someone better. Someone more exciting, richer, more alive. And me? I was the backup plan. I had begged, whatever force gave me this cursed gift of time travel for a second chance. I thought if I could go back, I could fix something. I thought maybe she was different before life got in the way. Before the rot set in. But no. She was always like this. And I was always blind. I walked back to our apartment, no, her apartment, now. Even stepping inside felt like an invasion of my own dignity. I noticed details I hadn't before, the shallow way she'd arranged the photos of us, the gaps between our framed smiles like air pockets waiting to rupture. I stood in our bedroom, staring at the perfume bottles lined up like trophies of seduction. Everything was curated, rehearsed, and a show. And I'd bought front row seats. That night, I didn't cry. Not like I thought I would. No, it was worse than that. I was hollow. Grief would have been a kindness. What I felt was disintegration, the slow, tearing away of self, thread by thread. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence throb like a heartbeat. Her breath, steady beside me, was a lullaby of betrayal. I thought about confronting her, just sitting up and whispering, I know. I heard you. But then what? Watch her lips form apologies while her mind runs marathons through excuses. Hear her inner voice scream truths her face would never show. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I started collecting moments. Not the good ones, the cracks. The fake laughter at dinners, the empty eyes during our anniversary trip to Murray, the way she hesitated before saying, I love you, when she was tired. They had always been there. I just never wanted to see them. By morning, I was still lying there, but something had changed. The pain was still there, God, was it there, but it had a different flavor. Focus. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was clarity. And clarity is sharp. It cuts. She had played her part well, played me well, but now I had the script. I knew the lines before she could say them. I had the power of hindsight, and insight. She had thought I was harmless. Predictable. Safe. Now, I'd become something else entirely. I left the apartment quietly that morning, didn't say a word. I walked aimlessly at first, just letting the cold wind slap my face awake. I stopped at a mirror outside a shop window and looked at myself, really looked. I saw a man unraveling, but also a man being reborn. The pain hadn't vanished. It never would. But under the ash, something fierce was glowing. She thought I was the soft one. But now, I was about to show her just how sharp a soft heart can become. I used to believe love was about surrender. About giving someone all the fragile pieces of you and trusting they wouldn't crush them when they got bored. But now I know better. It had been a month since I heard her say it, those words that shattered me. Not to my face, of course. I was never worthy of that kind of honesty. I only heard her thoughts when I returned to that day, standing behind the veil of time and sentiment. When I knelt in front of her, love letter in hand, trembling like a teenager again, I finally heard the truth she never said out loud. I'm settling. He's safe. He'll never know. That was the day the ground gave out beneath me. That was the day I stopped mourning her love and started calculating her debt. I didn't explode. I didn't scream or confront her. That would have been mercy, and I wasn't in the business of mercy anymore. I watched her carefully from that day forward. The same woman who used to cry on my shoulder about her ex, the same ex she started seeing again once I paid off her mother's surgery, once she secured her new boutique lease in my name. It's just lunch with a friend, she had said. Sure. And I was just a fool with a wallet and a heart too big for his own good. But now I saw it all with new eyes. Patterns. Weaknesses. A woman who needed to be seen, worshipped, envied. She lived for image, our relationship was nothing more than her favorite performance. So I started assembling my stage. I reached out to Daniel, my old college roommate. He was working in corporate branding now, had connections with influencers, agencies, the very world she drooled over. I didn't tell him everything. Just enough. I want to build someone up online, I said, make her look like a goddess for 6 months. Then dropped the curtain. He blinked at me through the screen. Is this about Maya? I didn't answer. Instead, I created an alias, Sienna Ardent. A mysterious fashion sponsor. She began sending Maya gifts, expensive handbags, skincare boxes, PR packages, things Maya had always dreamed of receiving. And I made sure she got them in public places. At brunch with her friends. At events. Always delivered by a well-dressed assistant, always with a handwritten note that said, "You deserve the world." It fed her ego like wildfire. She started posting more, talking about working with luxury brands, weaving stories that weren't hers to tell. The fame came quickly. So did the entitlement. Meanwhile, I quietly created a mirror account that followed all her online behavior. Collected every lie, every stolen aesthetic, every embellished post. And then came the next part, the invite. I sent it to Sienna. A private gala. Fashion elite. One night only. Where something unforgettable, the note said. What she didn't know was that every person in that room would be someone she had stepped on, lied to, or ghosted in her climb. I knew them all. The assistant she screamed at in the middle of a boutique. The cousin she borrowed money from and never paid back. The old friend she unfollowed the day she started dating me. They would all be there, wearing masks, sipping champagne, waiting. But it wasn't about public humiliation. Not yet. That would be too quick. It was about letting her taste it, belonging, recognition, power, and then ripping it away. I kept a journal. Not of what she did, but of what I felt. Each entry was a reminder, this is not about hate. This is about truth. Because I didn't want to become her. I didn't want to destroy for the sake of destruction. I wanted her to feel what I felt when I heard her thoughts. The moment love turns hollow. The second someone you trust looks at you and sees nothing. So I smiled at her in the mornings, made her coffee, kissed her shoulder. All while setting the stage for her final scene. And when the spotlight finds her, she'll finally hear what I never said. You never deserved the man you made me become. I never imagined that revenge would taste so quiet. Not sweet, not bitter, just eerily calm, like standing in the eye of a storm you built yourself. 3 months ago, I would have trembled at the thought of confronting Alina and Marcus. Back then, I still loved her. Still flinched at the sound of her voice, still clung to her memory like a fool clutches a burning letter, hoping the pain proves it was real. But after hearing her thoughts that day, the day I confessed, again, and relived our past like a naive ghost, I understood what I had to do. Love dies a different kind of death when you see it was never returned. And so I planned. My revenge wasn't going to be loud. It would be methodical. Precise. Personal. It started with the exhibition. Alina was a rising curator at the city's premier art museum. She built her career on elegance, exclusivity, and image. Every gallery she opened became a magnet for journalists and collectors. It wasn't just about the art, it was about her persona, poised, enigmatic, untouchable. And Marcus? He was her lover now, of course. My former best friend. A second-hand collector with inherited wealth and a jawline that made women trust him far too easily. The kind of man who could walk into a room and convince people he belonged there, because he believed it himself. What they didn't know was that I had quietly acquired 2 things they had always overlooked. A rare original from Alina's favorite artist, Adrian Koval, sold in a discreet private auction 6 months ago to an anonymous bidder. A digital recording of Alina's thoughts from the day I time-traveled back. Yes, I kept the tech hidden. I'd told no one. And it had picked up every unspoken cruelty, every smug thought about how she settled for me until something better, Marcus, came along. She called me a safe option in her mind. Said I was grateful for her touch, like a dog who doesn't know it's being kicked. I listened to it every night like a mantra. I waited until the gala, a fundraising event she organized herself, to unveil a series of modern revivalist works. It was her crown jewel moment. Her chance to step beyond curation and into influence. I arrived in a black suit. Understated. Alone. I had sent the files, those internal recordings, to a few carefully selected guests in advance, art critics, board members, and one major investor who had a known disdain for personal scandal. The file came from an anonymous tip line labeled, "Inside the Mind of a Curator." The file was edited perfectly, voiced over, matched with a transcript, spliced with photos of her and Marcus taken just weeks after our divorce was finalized. Time-stamped. Geotagged. I knew the effect would be slow at first. A whisper here. A second glance there. She wouldn't even notice it until it was too late. The Koval painting. That was the finale. She'd been hunting it for months, calling it the last piece of her curatorial vision. I donated it anonymously to the gala's closing auction, under the name A. Novice, Latin for a new beginning. The catalog listed it simply as, donated by a private collector, with permission to publicly transfer ownership. At 9 p.m., just as her speech began, the whispers peaked. A critic confronted a journalist. A gallerist showed the transcript to a skeptical investor. And Alina? She was on stage, in her red velvet gown, mid-sentence. And I believe that art, like love, demands authenticity. A truth that transcends. Someone laughed. Not a chuckle. A sharp, ugly crack of disbelief. Alina paused. Her hand twitched. The investor stood and walked out. Then two more followed. Marcus, seated in the front, looked confused. Then he got a message. He fumbled with his phone, pale, his mouth tightening into a thin line. Alina stammered. Is something wrong? No one answered. But I could see it on their faces now. The curtain was falling. And then the lights dimmed for the painting reveal. There it was. Koval's Grief in Gold. A masterpiece. Alina's breath caught. I saw her mouth the words, "How?" And then she saw the placard. Donated by A. Novice. A few recognized the name. She didn't. Not yet. But Marcus turned. His eyes locked on mine across the crowd. He knew. I nodded once. Just enough for him to understand, I did this. I planned every step. I saw everything, and I made you feel what I felt. I didn't wait for the meltdown. I'd already seen it in my head. Alina would chase Marcus backstage. He'd deny everything. She'd accuse him of leaking the audio, but he didn't even know it existed. Her world would collapse inward, the museum would issue a statement, the board would re-evaluate her leadership, and she'd fall from grace with as much elegance as a broken wine glass. None of it required me to raise my voice. Outside, the night was cool. I stood beneath the museum's marble archways, inhaling deeply, like a man stepping out of a burning house he'd once called home. I didn't feel triumph. Not really. Just release. Revenge, it turns out, isn't about fury. It's about clarity. They stole my love. My trust. My time. I gave them something far more painful in return. The truth. And the thing about truth is, it never whispers for long. I sat in the same park where I once wrote that love letter, the one I never gave her. The one I burned after I heard her thoughts that day. I remember clutching it so tightly, my knuckles turned white, thinking it would change our future. Foolish, how love makes you believe you can rewrite people like stories. But people write to you instead. With lies, with silences, with betrayals you don't see coming until they're already carved into your skin. It had been 3 weeks since I walked out of the courtroom. 3 weeks since the truth spilled like acid across that polished floor, her affair, the manipulation, the years of pretending. The letter she read aloud in her fake tears, my letter, rewritten and twisted to gain sympathy, became her undoing when I pulled out the original, time-stamped and unedited. She didn't know I kept a scanned copy, tucked away in a password-protected file under my dead brother's name. Everyone gasped. Her lawyer froze. Even Adrian, her so-called soulmate, the man she claimed to have chosen, for honesty, stared at her like she was some stranger. I walked out with nothing but my name. I didn't want the house, the car, or even the bank accounts. Let her keep them. Let them rot around her. What I claimed was silence, peace. A life no longer filled with tiptoes and second-guessing my worth. That was my revenge. Not destroying her, but reclaiming me. At first, it felt hollow. Like I'd ripped out something essential just to prove I could survive without it. But that's the thing, they never teach you that healing doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like standing in ruins, deciding whether to build again or walk away. I chose both. I moved to a different part of the city. Got a small apartment near the river. I started teaching creative writing part-time. Turns out there's freedom in helping others find the words you once swallowed. I even met someone, a barista named Elise, who doesn't flinch when I pause too long before answering, who doesn't ask for my past unless I offer it. Maybe this time, I won't rush into anything. Maybe I'll just let things be. As for her, Amelia, last I heard, she tried to sue Adrian for defamation after he went public with their private messages. Her name's no longer on the charity board. She's off social media. A shadow of who she once pretended to be. And me? I still keep that letter, the original one. Framed. Not as a memory of love, but as proof of the person I used to be. Naive, maybe. But honestly. Willing. Capable of real love. I don't regret loving her. I regret ignoring my own silence whenever something felt wrong. I regret the way I edited myself to fit her narrative. But now, I write my own. And in this version, the hero doesn't just win. He walks away, wiser, sharper, quieter. Alive.